Today we have the real star, Sam Potolicchio from Georgetown University. So, Sam works with RENEPO for many years now. He teaches for our students and he attends all our campuses. So, Sam, we're really glad to see you and have a nice lecture.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay. This is an easy crowd if you're clapping for me before I start speaking. Usually you have to wait until you see whether or not I'm good. I want to congratulate you for making it here to campus. I know the selection process was very rigorous. When I was in college, in our summer campuses, we slept on dirt ground and we didn't have these incredible views. So congratulations. I hope you make the best of this opportunity. And I'm here today to teach you all about influence in public speaking. But whenever I do a lecture, I always like to start with a song to get people a bit excited. So I'm going to play you a video here. It's going to last about 5 minutes. You're going to be entertained, I think. Some of you might laugh. But at the end of this video, I want you to tell me why I'm starting this session on public speaking, persuasion, and influence with this video. I want you to tell me how this video relates to effective public speaking. That's your job, to think about how this is connected. The premise of this video is pretty interesting. What they've done is they've put a video camera at a gas station, and they're trying to make people feel very uncomfortable. So the idea is, as the people are pumping their gas, they will be on TV throughout the entire country. And over 50 million people will watch them pump their gas. And the TV host of this show tries to ask very uncomfortable questions or has them do things that they would be embarrassed about. And everybody who is typically on this television show runs away. They feel embarrassed. They're usually wearing sweatpants and t-shirts, and they're told to do things that none of us would want to do in front of 50 million people. Okay, aside from getting you to cheer at the beginning of a lecture, why am I starting with this to talk about public speaking? Who said this? What's your name? Dimitri said that he's not afraid. They're not afraid to be out in public. A comedian, Jerry Seinfeld, said that the thing that people fear the most in life is public speaking, and the second biggest fear is death, which means at a funeral, you would rather be in the coffin than giving the eulogy. That's how fearful we are of public speaking. And I think if we were honest, if I had you raise your hands right now and asked you who would be a bit nervous to come up here and speak to your classmates, about 85% of the hands would go up, if we were being honest. Who's afraid of coming up here and speaking in front of your classmates right now? Raise your hand. Okay, we have a lot of dishonesty in this room right now. So I thought I'd start my presentation talking about how you can be an effective performer when you make a presentation. You have a couple projects during this campus where you will have to make a presentation to your peers, but also to experts. How can you get up here on the stage and be an effective performer? And I want to give you some secrets. You ready? Number one. Oh, wow, you really take notes. This is impressive. Number one, when you're on this stage, you have to realize that you're on the stage for a reason. Typically, when you're making a public presentation, unless you have someone like me who pulls one of you out of here randomly and says, start speaking, you're up here because you're the expert. Because you know the stuff, and the audience is here to learn from you. And this is a magical understanding to have. Because oftentimes when we're up on the stage, we're viewing everybody here as if they're looking at us with judgment. You almost feel naked up on the stage because you don't know what they're thinking and you think they may be skeptical. But in reality, they're typically trying to learn from you. Not many people in the audience want you to fail. It's usually not the case. How many of you, and this could be an interesting experiment, how many of you really want me to fail right now while I'm speaking to you? One person, and it's another expert. Think about this. If you understand that the audience is cheering for you, it becomes a lot more liberating. Some speech coaches tell you, you want to have familiar faces in the audience. You can't bring your mother to every single speech. But what you can do is realize that this audience wants you to succeed. And so they're cheering for you. And there is this rule. In this room, we have about 250 people, and a couple people raised their hands. I don't know if they were joking or not, that want me to fail, but this is a good percentage. I have a rule, which is 1 to 3% of the people are not going to be good people in your audience. They're either going to be disrespectful, they're not there to learn from you, or they're openly rooting for you to fail. And that's just part of the ground when you're a public speaker. But 97 to 99% of your audience will want you to succeed. Now let's return to this familiar faces piece of advice. Let's say everybody in this audience is foreign to you. And maybe you're in a situation where they might not all be hoping you're doing well. Maybe they're competitors when you're presenting your project. What is a strategy that you could employ to all of a sudden create some familiar faces in a room before you give a presentation? Anyone know what you can do? What could you do if you want to create some familiar faces? Establish a dialogue. Okay? What else? To meet someone before lecture. Both of these are correct. So if I'm walking out to the stage at 11:15, at about 11 o'clock, I will wander into this room and I will start to circulate and start to talk to people who will be part of my audience. Very important to do that. What's your name? Lazar, from Serbia. I know we did. I've been following him. So I'm going to start a conversation with Lazar. And if we have a decent conversation, we can even chat about something like the weather. The first thing that I'm going to do when I start my speech is look right at him. And I'm going to return to that small talk that we had already established. And it will automatically settle me down. Some speech coaches tell you to tell a joke immediately when you speak. This is a very high-risk, high-reward situation. You tell that joke as a public speaker and nobody laughs, you're really going to feel naked up here. It's very awkward. And this is a very low-risk but high-reward situation where I'm feeling a bit nervous. I've already established a good connection with him, and I'm going to focus on him. In a perfect world, I would make conversation over here, in this part of the audience before my lecture, conversation over here, and then maybe saunter back and start a conversation in the middle of the room. So I'm not just looking at him like I'm a psycho the whole time before I settle down. I can look at him, I can look in the middle at someone I've already talked to, and I can look to the right, and all of a sudden, about 2 minutes into my speech, I'm feeling a bit relaxed. Tip number 1, people in the audience are on your side, and you can make yourself more familiar with the audience before you start. Tip number 2, who remembers the Olympic Games in Sochi? Okay. Russia did very well. If you listened to some of the Olympians who won medals after their performances, one of the questions that the media would ask is, were you nervous before your event? And never do you hear one of these great athletes saying, yes, I was nervous. They will say something else. What do they say in response? She said it right here. I was excited. What's your name? Marka. Sir, Monica from Croatia. Okay. I was excited. What they have done is they have interpreted this feeling in them and made it a positive element. So when you feel that surge of nerves, it's not necessarily that you're anxious. It's that you're excited. Right? You are a high-performance athlete when you're on this stage. You need to treat this as if an athlete would treat it and get into the mind zone to be able to have an effective performance. People can feel when you have an energy. And if you can make sure that that adrenaline turns into a positive energy, people will get a contagious feeling of that energy. Right? You're not nervous, you're excited, and you're ready to go. I'm really jealous of people who get nervous before speeches. I think it's very possible that I am psychotic. One of the reasons that you know that someone's a psycho, if you're about to shock them and you put an MRI test on their brain doesn't change. I have never been nervous in my life except for one time when it came to public speaking. I was going to deliver a lecture in front of 1,500 people, and every single person in the room was a lot more prestigious and a lot smarter than I was. And I called up my friend who had participated in this conference before, and I asked him, tell me what I'm supposed to do in this situation. And he told me, Sam, it's not a speech, it's not a lecture. You're going to go up on the stage, and the conference organizer is just going to ask you some questions. And the worst thing that you can do is prepare for this. They will not invite you back to the conference if you prepare notes and you prepare a speech. It's just spontaneous questions. So then I felt, okay, this is going to be easy. I show up to the conference. We were having dinner right before the event started, and there were 4 other people that were supposed to be in this event with me. One had won one of those golden statues for movies. We call them Oscars. Very famous actress. Another person was a Nobel Prize winner. Another person was one of the most famous CEOs in the world. And then another person was a president of a very large university. And then it was me. So we're at the dinner table, and the moderator goes around the table and says, what's the title of your speech? Now, I had talked to my friend before, and he said, Sam, one thing you have to know is that the organizer likes to play jokes on the speakers. And he's going to try to make you feel uncomfortable. So when he said, what's the title of your speech? I started laughing. And I said, that's a funny joke. And he looked at me like I was crazy. And then he asked the next person at the table, what's the title of your speech? And the Academy Award-winning actress said the title. Then the Nobel Prize winner said the title, and so on. And then I thought, wow, this is a really elaborate joke. They're all trying to play a prank on me. So we go up to the stage after dinner. The 5 of us are sitting on the stage along with the organizer. I am the second person supposed to go. Remember, I just think it's going to be questions. And then the Academy Award-winning actress goes up to the stage, and she starts to give a speech. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I only have a little bit of time to prepare a speech in front of all these people that are much smarter than I am. And I felt nervous. I think to this day, it was the best speech that I gave. And the reason why is if you can effectively transform those nerves into excitement, you become a lot more energetic, a lot more charismatic, but your brain also operates more effectively. There's a reason why all the great athletes don't perform as well in practice as they do in the big meets, in the big games, in the big championships. And it's because they're channeling that energy for some good. Right? You are the master of your nerves, and you can use it in a positive way. Number 3, what do athletes do before they perform? Okay, they relax, but they also do something else. But you're doing it right now. They move. They warm up. They do calisthenics. They might even jump up and down. There's a professor at Harvard Business School who wanted to know why women did not participate as much as men in class. And she assumed it was because of gender norms, that women are just not as likely as men to be active in class. But when she studied it, she found out the real reason they weren't as active is because in class they made themselves smaller. Physically, they made themselves smaller, whereas men made themselves bigger. When you make yourself smaller, you raise the level of cortisol, which is the drug for stress in your body. But you also inhibit the release of serotonin, which is the drug for confidence. When you make yourself bigger, you release serotonin, which is confidence. So then she did a follow-up study, and she had people who were going on job interviews make themselves big. And then she had some people make themselves small. Guess who did better on the job interviews? The people who made themselves big. When you see Usain Bolt win the gold medal in the Olympics, what does he do? He makes his body big. Predators, they're big. Prey, get small. So one of the pieces of advice that speech coaches give presenters is before you go on to make your big presentation, you need to make yourself big for at least 90 seconds physically. And this will release the drugs in your body that will allow you to transform that nervous energy into positive excitement. Right? Tip number 4. People have no idea what it is you're going to say. They don't know. So when you mess up, they don't know you messed up. I could forget 30 minutes of material today. My goal could have been to present to you a certain amount of information, and I could come up here and completely forget it, and you wouldn't know. I remember one time when I was in Greece, before one of my speeches, they had asked me, the local government had asked me to give them my speech beforehand. Now, I don't write down speeches. I never use notes. I like to improvise and adjust to the needs of the audience. So it's a waste of time for me to write down my speech. I just don't do it. So what I did was I handed them a speech that I had written about 5 years before and just gave it to them because I had assumed that they wanted the speech to make sure I wasn't going to say anything negative about the government. And I had no plans to talk about government at all. So I just handed them some random speech. Later that night when I was performing my speech, all of a sudden, I saw all the eyes in the audience go over my head. And I thought maybe I'm having a bad hair day, and they're looking at my hair that's extended upwards. And then finally, I got very curious about what they were looking at, and I looked behind myself, and it's the speech that I had given them that I had done 5 years ago that had nothing to do with my topic. And the reason why they had put that up behind me was because the audience wasn't fluent in English. And so they wanted them to be able to see the words to make it easier to understand. That's not going to happen in your life. It's going to be a very rare situation when your audience knows what you were intending to do. And then you didn't do it, and they saw that. And this should liberate you. So when you find, we get so scared when we're up here, I got to do point 1, point 2, point 3, point 5. You skip point 4. They don't know you skipped point 4. You just keep rocking it. Right? They're going to be none the wiser. And if you put together all of these tips, you'll be a lot more effective in delivering the presentation, particularly with the final tip that I'm going to give you.